So welcome back to Cosy Rosie Crochet. I'm so excited to have you back here with me for another one of our Hodgepodge blanket crochet along granny squares. Today we're learning how to crochet the Honeycomb Trellis. I really love this firm trellis pattern that's created by working lots of single crochets into our chain spaces. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and of course the notification bell so that you never miss out on another one of my crochet tutorials again. If you've missed any of the other squares in the event, you can click on the playlist for the Hodgepodge blanket crochet along and you'll find them all tucked in there for you, ready to stitch up. You can also find a written pattern for this and all the other squares over on my website, and everything is linked in the description box below. Let's find out the materials we need to make our very own Honeycomb Trellis square. So the materials that we're going to need to complete our Honeycomb Trellis square is any Aran or worsted weight yarn. I'm going to be doing mine in one solid colour because it will really show off those honeycomb elements to this square. And I'm going to be using shade number 245. Alongside the yarn, I've got my usual 5mm crochet hook, a darning needle and a pair of scissors just to snip off at the end. And that's pretty much all that we need. So gather all of those materials and let's get started. So for the Honeycomb Trellis square, we're going to start by making a chain. Well, we're going to make our slip knot and place it on our hook, of course. And then we're going to start by making a chain of 27. So for our chain, we yarn over and bring our hook through that loop on our hook 27 times. So a chain of 27. Get that made and I'll meet you back here in a moment. Once we have our chain of 27 made, we're going to start by working one single crochet into the second chain from hook. As always, this loop on our hook does not count as a chain. There's chain number 1. So we're going to work one US single crochet into that second chain from hook, and then into each and every stitch across, back down to the end, all the way back down to our slip knot. So continue to work one single crochet down to the end, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1, where our stitch count will be 26 US single crochets. Going into row 2, we're going to start by making a chain of 1 and turning our work. This chain 1 here does not count as a stitch here or throughout the whole pattern. We're going to start by making one single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So that's into the stitch underneath our chain 1 and into the next stitch. And then we chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and this is our first arch that we're making. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, so we don't work into this one, we don't work into that one, we work into the next one, working one single crochet, and then we single crochet into the next 2 as well. And we're going to repeat this all the way along until we reach the last 4 stitches. So we chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We skip the next 2 stitches and work one single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And that's going to create our arches in this stitch. So we're going to chain 5, 2, 3, 4 and 5, skip 2 stitches and then single crochet in the next 3. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 2, single crochet into the next 3 stitches, and that should leave 4 stitches unworked. 1, 2, 3, I'm going to do 3, yeah. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches remaining, and what we're going to do is do our chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip the next 2 stitches and then just single crochet into the last 2. It's a bit curly, my work, there we go. So at the end of row 2, you're going to have 5 chain 5 spaces and 16 single crochets. Moving straight into row 3, we're going to chain 1, which again does not count as a stitch, and single crochet into the same stitch. We're going to skip this next one, and then working into our chain 5 space, we're going to work 5 single crochets. So we're just inserting straight into that chain 5 space and working those 5 single crochets around that chain of 5. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We then skip the next stitch and work 1 single crochet into the middle of those 3. Skip the next stitch and we repeat it. So we work 5 single crochets around into that chain of 5. Lost count already. 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5. We skip that next stitch and work 1 single crochet into the next. And this is just framing those chain 5 spaces. So we work 1 single crochet, sorry. So we're working 5 single crochets into and around that chain 5. 3, 4 and 5. We skip 1 stitch, single crochet into the next. We're going to repeat that all the way along. When we get to this last one, we're skipping that stitch and just single crocheting into the last. I'll meet you here for that final chain 5 space. So I've just worked my final 5 single crochets into that chain 5 space, skipping that second from last stitch, and then single crocheting into the last. So at the end of row 3, you're going to have a total of 31 single crochets. So going into row 4, we start with a turning chain of 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now that chain 6 counts as a US treble crochet and 2 chains. So we skip the stitch at the base of our turning chain and the next stitch, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2 and 3, and they are the middle 3 single crochets that we worked in the previous round. We then chain 5. We're going to skip the next 3 stitches, so 1, 2 and 3, and that brings us back to the start of those middle 3 to work 1 single crochet into each of them. We're recreating what we did in that first row, creating these chain 5 arches. So from here we're going to repeat all the way along. So we make our chain of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, skip 3 stitches, 1, 2 and 3, then work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Chain 5, skip 3, 1, 2 and 3, and then single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Now we've only got 1 more to do, we might as well do it together. So we chain 5, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and we work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And here we're going to work a chain of 2, and then we work our treble crochet. So for this is a US treble crochet. So we yarn over the hook twice, and we insert the hook into that last stitch because we're skipping that one. So insert your hook into that last stitch, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So at the end of row 4, you're going to have 4 chain 5 arches, 2 trebles, so you've got the treble that you've just made and that chain of 4 that counts as a treble, And then you've got 15 single crochets as well, and the equivalent of these 2 chain 2 spaces at the end. Lots of different stitches in that row, but you're basically replicating these chain 5 arches, and at each end you've got a chain 2 space. Going into row 5, we start with a turning chain of 1. Now that chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we're going to work 1 single crochet into the same stitch as that chain 1, and then into this chain 2 space we're going to work 2 single crochets. So we just insert into that chain 2 space and work 2 single crochets. We're going to skip 1 and then single crochet into the middle of that group of 3, and then we're going to work into these chain 5 spaces, working 5 single crochets. We skip 1 stitch and work 1 single crochet into the next, and just repeat that all the way along to that final chain 2 space. So keep working along to your final single crochet in the middle of these 3 here, and I'll meet you for our last chain 2 space. So once you've worked that final single crochet into the last of those middle 3, into this chain space here, we're going to work 2 single crochets, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet into that 4th chain from hook. So you might need to move your stitches out of the way. So 1, 2, 3, there's number 4. I'm going to insert my hook under 2 loops of that 4th chain and work 1 single crochet. So at the end of row 5 you should have a total stitch count of 31 single crochets. So the final row to set up this stitch repeat is row 6. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet into the same stitch as our chain 1 and into the next stitch. We're then going to chain 5, skip those next 3 stitches, so 1, 2 and 3, and work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. You might recognize this kind of pattern now. So we're going to do our chain of 5, skip those 3 stitches and work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches all the way to the end. So I'll meet you here for this last chain space. Well, sorry, I'll meet you after we've created our last chain space and skip these 3 stitches. I've worked those last 3 single crochets, so to finish this row we're going to work our chain of 5. There we go. I thought I'd done an extra one. We skip those next 3 stitches and work 1 single crochet into each of the last 2 stitches. So at the end of row 6 you should have 5 chain 5 spaces, just like we did at the very beginning, and we've got a total of 16 single crochets. So for rows 7 to 19 we're going to repeat rows 3 to 6 ending on row 3. So after you've completed all of those rows, do not turn your work, because we're going to go straight into our edging after the completion of row 19. So keep working those repeats and I'll meet you ready for the edging. So once you've completed your final repeat and you've completed that final row of 3, you should now have a total of 19 rows, and we're going to go straight into our edging. We're not going to turn our work, so we're just going to make a little chain 1 and we're going to work down the ends of each of these rows. So we're going to work 1 single crochet into the end of each row, and then around these treble crochets we're going to work 2 single crochets. And we're going to repeat that all the way down, working 1 single crochet into the end of each row and then 2 single crochets around those treble crochets. So continue all the way down and I'll meet you at the bottom ready to work our first corner. So once we've reached our first corner, we're going to work into the reverse of our chain, or the other side of our chain. We start by making our first corner, which is 1 single crochet, a chain 1, followed by another single crochet. We're going to work along the opposite side of our starting chain, working 1 single crochet into each, and then at the end here we're going to work our next crochet. So work all your singles all the way along, and I'll meet you for that next corner. So once we've reached the last stitch that would have been in our starting chain, that's where we're going to work our corner. So we single crochet, chain 1, and then work another single crochet. And then we're going to work back up the other ends of our rows, working 1 single crochet into the end of each row and 2 single crochets around those trebles. So once we've worked all the way back along, we've done all 3 edges. To work back across, we're going to start by making a chain of 4. Once we've done our chain of 4, we skip the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Just like before, we skip the next 3 stitches and we're going to make a chain of 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then we work 1 single crochet into the top of each of the next 3 stitches. Sorry, that motorcycle noise threw me off. And we just repeat that across. So we chain 3. 1, 2, 3, we skip those and work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm just working my final single crochet, and then from this point we've got these 2 stitches remaining. We're going to skip those and instead work a chain of 3 and then single crochet into the top of that first single crochet of the round. We're then going to chain 1 and turn so that we can work one final section across the top of that row we've just made. So we start by slip stitching back into that last chain 3 space we made, and then we're going to work 2 single crochets directly into that chain 2 space, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet into the top of each stitch across and 2 single crochets into each chain space across. So 1 and 2, and then working 1 single crochet into the top of each stitch. So there's 3 single crochets there as well. So repeat that all the way along, and I'll show you how to finish this final corner. We're just going to finish off by working a final 2 single crochets into the top of that chain space at the end. And if I turn it round to show you the right side again, it just gives us a neater edge to match up with the single crochets at the bottom. So you can go ahead and fasten off your project, ready to weave in those ends, because obviously we're not leaving them, are we? We're going to get them done. And that is the end of our honeycomb trellis square. Now this one's going to need a light blocking. If you find, so you can see here I've not done a very neat job of working into my chain spaces, you can adjust your stitches so that your chain spaces are nice and neat. Trying to think, there's another one that's a little bit bobbly, and it's just where I've not been very careful when I've worked around my chain. Don't worry, you're not alone if you've got a few bobbles there, but a gentle pull eliminates that bobble there. So there we have our honeycomb trellis square. I really hope you've enjoyed learning this trellis stitch. It can be almost quite repetitive but different because there's 4 different rows in the stitch repeat, but I really enjoy this. And I hope that you have as well. I'm going to go around and fiddle with all of these stitches, make sure that they're all nice and neat. And I'm going to be back with you tomorrow for another square in our Hodgepodge blanket. But here's another one completed. I'm feeling very proud of you for getting all of these done, and I will see you again tomorrow for another granny square pattern.